Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of this Thursday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. As I continue, unlike Ed Schultz, to run my mouth. Ed Schultz will stop running his mouth tomorrow night, but I will keep right on doing that. And Jeff, you were telling, we were talking over the news break here, and you were saying when you sort of talked about me being able to continue to run my mouth, that was actually a compliment.
Yeah, that was the point I was making, that at least you get to keep talking. Ed Schultz is down to 1 hour on his own webpage. So It was actually a compliment, Brian.
Okay. All right, Jeff. Thank you.
And your wife is awesome.
Okay. Well, I agree with that. You got no argument from me on that. So, all right. Now, another winnable war moment. This is another piece in the New York Times by Eric Ekholm. He came here and did a profile on AFR, American Family Association, and AFR a couple of years ago. He's their main religion writer, and he's got a piece on the New York Times today. Title of the piece, "With New Bill, Abortion Limits Spread in the South." And this is another winnable war moment. Bryan College is one of our winnable war moments. That college, evangelical nature, pushing back against the forces that want to push Christian colleges toward evolution. They held their ground. Adam and Eve, special creation through an act of God. Great move on their part. Now, here's another winnable war moment, that the abortion limits are spreading in the South because of good legislation. Now, he's writing specifically about a bill that just went through the Louisiana state legislature on Wednesday. And this bill, very similar to ones passed in Texas, very similar to ones passed in the state of Mississippi, that could force 3 of the 5 states' abortion clinics to close. 3 of the 5 abortion clinics in the state would be forced to close under this new piece of legislation. And it's similar, as Eric Ekholm points out, to bills passed in Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas. And he says this raises the possibility of drastically reduced access to abortion across a broad stretch of the South. Now, it's a very simple piece of legislation. It just says that doctors that perform abortions must have admitting privileges at local hospitals. And you think about it, that's just a simple matter of reproductive health. The pro-abortion crowd is always talking about women's health and reproductive health, and we have to protect a woman's reproductive health. Well, this is what this is all about, because there are complications that pop up all the time. Women die from botched abortions, from things that go wrong in abortion procedures. And the lawmakers in these states, Louisiana now, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, they say, look, we want to make sure that if a woman experiences surgical complications in the process of an abortion, that her doctor, the one that is performing the abortion, and knows more at that moment in time about exactly what's going on inside that woman's body, can go with her to the hospital where they try to save her life. That makes absolutely perfectly good sense. It's just common sense. It's pro-woman. But the problem is these abortion doctors, I've said this before, these guys are bottom feeders in the medical profession. People do not understand how despised abortion doctors are by professionals in the health industry, in the field of medicine. Why is that? Because medicine is all about saving life. It's all about healing. It's all about restoring. It is not about killing. It's not about putting people to death. And yet that's exactly what abortion is. It's the terminating of human life. No matter how you slice it, it's the termination of a human life. And so a lot of these abortion doctors just can't get admitting privileges in local hospitals. Some of them are religious hospitals, religiously affiliated. Other hospitals just don't want to be associated with abortion. Other hospitals have standards for admitting privileges, and these doctors can't meet them because they fly in, like the guy that does abortions at the abortion clinic in Mississippi. There's just one clinic left, and if the Fifth Circuit upholds Mississippi's law, that abortion clinic will be out of business, and Mississippi will become the first abortion-free state in the Union. May God see to it that that is the outcome. But the doctor that does abortions in Mississippi flies in from out of state. And so some hospitals say, look, you got to be practicing in this community. You can't be somebody that flies in and does this or that and have admitting privileges in our hospital. So that's a winnable war moment, ladies and gentlemen. Even the New York Times taking note of the changing landscape and the closing of abortion clinics all over the South. They're going to be down to 6 in the state of Texas, could be down to 2 in the state of Louisiana. One other point, I don't know where that story is. It's in my stack somewhere. But there is a poll taken in the battleground states. The battleground states, this is where elections could go either way. They are critical states for what happens to the Senate in 2014 in November. And this poll discovered that 80% of the people in those battleground states favor some kind of restrictions on abortion. They believe that there ought to be some meaningful, common sense restrictions on abortion. 80%. Now that means there's 20% of them want abortion on demand for any reason at any time, but that's not where 80% of the American people are. In other words, the American people, 80% of them have some level of discomfort with the concept of abortion. They think it's something that ought to be restricted. It ought to be restrained in some way. It ought to be managed in some way. That's 80%. So the good news is there that we are winning the battle for the hearts and minds of the American people. I think it was something like 45% don't want abortions under any circumstances. 35% will allow it, say in the case of life of the mother or rape and incest, some exceptions like that. But 80% support some kind of restriction on the process of abortion. A story Fred Jackson just handed me. It's up on onenewsnow.com, and I had the story in the stack, but he brought me the One News Now version of the story. That is that you're aware of the rainbow flag. That's the flag that celebrates the homosexuality, the homosexual agenda. And the ambassador to Spain, the ambassador that manages the U.S. Embassy in Madrid, Spain, hoisted, this is according to Newsmax.com, hoisted the rainbow flag outside the building last week to mark the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia on May 17. Thing I want you to observe is we are now gone past homophobia. I've told you, look, with the homosexual agenda, it's never enough. It's what the proverb says. They're like a leech. The leech has 2 daughters. Give, give, they cry. So we thought maybe if we give them everything they want on the issue of homosexuality, they'll go away. They will leave us alone. No, now the next frontier is transphobia. That's the next frontier that has to be conquered. Ladies and gentlemen, we just have to stand up to this agenda right now. Don't give an inch, not a centimeter. We've got to stand up to this thing right now. There is no place at which they will stop. And now the rainbow flag, in celebration not just of homosexuals and lesbians, but now of transgenders, flying outside the U.S. Embassy in the country of Spain. Our ambassador there to Spain is an open homosexual. And the story on One News Now makes the point that 2 days before the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia was the 20th anniversary of the UN-declared International Day of Families. That's a UN declaration. Every year, May 15, International Day of Families. White House website, not a word about the International Day of Families. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back.